grew up.
Could we just give it a few seconds?
Yeah, I was gonna blab for
Oh,
a few.
all right, sorry. Okay.
Where did you grow up? And also, and just tell me just a little bit about your family, like where you were in the family.
Well, I grew up in the Sacramento area. My father was a farmer, and my mother, in those days when my father first came to America, the Japanese women were not allowed. They weren't able to come. So later on, when they passed a law that the woman folks could join the men folks in the United States, why my mother and lots of the women came as a picture bride. That is, they sent the picture back to Japan, and then the woman decided, which man she wanted to marry. My mother was born in Japan and went to college as a teacher. She graduated the college as a teacher with 3 other friends, and so they decided that Japan was too strict with the woman folks, and they were not supposed to be educated. So they decided they wanted to come to California. And so, of course, they didn't know who they were going to marry except by the pictures. So she came, and she's never a farmer, so it was a hard life for her. The other 2 friends that came with, they married business people in Sacramento, and they did well. But my mother had a hard life, and I was the second child of the family.
Out of how many children?
And they had 4. My brother, myself, and 2 younger brothers.
Just pretend the camera's not there. Don't look at him. Just only look at me. Okay. You're doing great.
All right.
So how old were you when the war broke out?
Well, when the war broke out, I was already married, and I had 2 children, my daughter and my son. My son was 7 months old at the time. And the war, we got the news of Pearl Harbor. It was a Sunday morning, I remember quite clearly. It was a dreary morning, and I was doing some ironing, and I heard the news on the radio. And so we stopped everything.
What did you think?
I thought, what was going to happen to us? But mostly I thought, what will I do with the children? They needed to be bathed, and they needed to be changed, and they needed to be fed. But I felt that I would do whatever was best for them and forget about myself.
Were you afraid of what was going to happen to them or to your family?
Yes, I was a little concerned because I was hoping we would all be together. And I think we were assured that we would all be evacuated together. So that, didn't concern me too much. But I just wondered how I would take care of the youngsters.
Tell me again, where were you living then at that time?
I was living on the farm.
Start all over
I was living.
Oh, sorry. As soon as I shut up.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I was living on the farm with Bill's parents in Sacramento in the rural area. They were farmers. And so we knew we had to evacuate. And so when we heard Pearl Harbor, we knew that the time would come when we had to evacuate, but we didn't know for sure. It was in May, so it was strawberry time. And we were all out in picking strawberries to send to the market when I looked up and I saw some soldiers posting some sign on the post, electrical power post. And I told Bill, he was with us, and he ran over there, and it was notice on there that we would have 10 days to get ready to evacuate. So we dropped everything and came into the home and debated what was going to happen.
Let's just cut. Make sure everyone's fine. Try not to look at the camera. Try just to look at me, because the way this is good. I'm interested. I hadn't heard the story before about somebody watching them post up the evacuation order. What did it say, and what did you think?
I knew it was coming. I knew we would have to evacuate, but we didn't know when or where or how. But on the post, I remember Bill saying that we would have 10 days to get our things ready, and we would have to get rid of our things. So we were all in a turmoil. But I can't exactly remember, but I know we all went to the city of Sacramento and ordered canvas bags so we could put our things in them, because we were allowed two suitcases and whatever we could carry. So we had to. And then we had to get rid of our household things, but we didn't know what to do. So the neighbor in the back of us offered to stay in the house, and there was a farmer, Caucasian farmer, next to the farm that said that he would take care of the grapes, because they were grape farmers, and that he would pay the taxes on the property. So that was a big relief. And then people start coming in. A lot of them were displaced from Oklahoma, and they wanted to buy the refrigerator, and for $10 or $5 or something, whatever. But if we didn't let them have it for that price, they would have come and taken it anyways. So that was it. We were in a turmoil, but we got together and we got everything packed to evacuate. And we were notified that we had to go to Elk Grove railway station. So we had to, my brother didn't get the evacuation notice yet. So he came with his truck, and we all got into his truck and went to Elk Grove to catch the train to go to Fresno.
No, okay. We'll see you. Go ahead. We'll cut. So, were you angry? Were you angry about this?
No.
You weren't angry.
We were told that it was for the best of us, because if we had stayed on the ranch or in that area, we would, people would come and shoot us or whatever, which did happen. We couldn't go into town because we were restricted to, I think, maybe 10 miles it was, and they couldn't go in to get their hair cut. They wouldn't, because we were Japanese descent, why they wouldn't allow us into town, and they couldn't get a haircut or to the stores.
So now, before the war, was it the racism that bad?
No, before the war was all right. There was, there were some from jealousy, I think, because the Japanese farmer worked hard and made money, where the others didn't work as hard and didn't make as money. But there was some trouble, but not that much.
Did you see the kind of headlines in the newspaper? Did you remember reading the headlines, and they all were saying things like "Japs get out" and things like that?
Yes, I do.
Tell me.
I read in the headlines.
I'm sorry.
Big headlines.
Start again without me talking. Start again.
They had headlines in the newspapers and in the radios. Of course, there wasn't that much TV yet, but in the radio and newspapers about the Japanese were dangerous to the country, and we would be taken out of California.
Tell me, Lily, tell me about some of the headlines in the newspapers again.
Well, I don't remember too much about the headlines in the newspapers, because we were in the country and I was homebound. We couldn't go into town at the time, so there wasn't that much except what we heard on the radio.
So you felt that it was in some ways for your safety that you were being moved?
Well, they claimed, the government said that it was for our own good that we were being evacuated, but we felt that we had to give up everything, and we couldn't understand why as a citizen. And I had two brothers in the army at the time, so we felt like we were citizens, but we were treated as aliens.
You were citizens with brothers who were in the army.
Yeah, they were already in the army serving, they were in the 442 Company Battalion, and we couldn't understand why. But because of our facial features and our background, we were all aliens or whatever, and sent to camp.
So tell me about going to the Fresno fairground. Before, what you told me was you stayed there for 3 months, and you were telling me how hard it was with two little children, and how there's no Pampers, there's no any of the conveniences. Tell me about that again.
Yes, we were from Elk Grove. We were put on an old train and went to the Fresno fairgrounds, and it was so hot that day. But when we got there, we in the dining room, I still remember we were served hot stew, and it was so hot I could hardly eat it. But then I ate some because I knew I had to have some kind of nourishment. But my son, being 7 months old, he gave us bottled baby bottle. And of course, it wasn't fresh milk, it was powdered milk. And I didn't like the smell of it, but he did mine. He drank up his milk. And all through camp life, he had powdered milk. But he grew on it, and so I was very happy.
Now, how hard was it to be a mother of small children in camp? Did you have any conveniences?
No, well, we didn't have any conveniences, but we had to go to the mess hall, central mess hall, and stand in line, get our food. But the food to me wasn't that bad. I felt I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to go shopping for groceries, and I was brought up to enjoy everything. So I just ate what was served. But to some evacuees, it was very, very hard. They couldn't stand the meals.
You told me before that the whole situation in Fresno and getting there with the children was so hard that you blocked it out. I mean, when you think back on it, is it how?
Yes, I know. My son was seven months old, and he had to have diapers, but I still to this day cannot remember what diapers I had. But I know I changed him, but I don't know where. I know in those days we didn't have the convenience of Pampers that we have today. Well, I don't know what I did, but I know that I did keep him clean.
I'm sure you did. How you telling me about how hot it was at the fairground? You're saying that the asphalt on your roof dripped, and that you told me there was some hay in the corner in a sack. And
Yes.
you had to stuff your own mattresses, and that there was asphalt that sank into everything. Tell me
Yes.
about that again.
Yes, when we arrived in Fresno Fairground, we were assigned barracks, and so we went in, and it was so hot. The floor was asphalt, and it was so hot that we were assigned cots, but the legs of the cot would sink into the floor, And then in the corner there was a bunch of pile of hay, and I couldn't understand what the hay was for. And so I asked, she says, "Oh, you're supposed to fill those bags with the hay for your mattress." And so we filled our bags and set it up on the cot, and I laid my baby down for a nap.
Yeah.
Someone's at the
Is
door.
there someone at the door? Tell me again. So you're telling me about that you had to stuff your mattresses with hay.
Yes.
Tell me more about this asphalt. I don't. Tell me. Can you describe that to me again?
Well, when we went into our barracks, the floor is asphalt, and it was so hot that day in Fresno that when we sat on the cots that was furnished us, the legs would sink into the asphalt.
Did the asphalt drip from the roof?
Yes, it just was dripping from the roof too, because it was so hot.
That's disgusting.
It was. I cried. I cried.
And this is going to be home. You have no idea for how long?
But I had my children, and so they kept me from falling apart, really. Because, the baby had to be coddled, they had to be fed, they had to be changed. So that kept me going. If it weren't for them, I think I would have fallen apart.
So then you're going to go to Arkansas. Tell me, do you know anything about Arkansas at all before you get there?
Well, Arkansas, I knew the state of Arkansas because my brother and my father and a group of fellows had gone to Arkansas to farm years before when we were youngsters. And so then I knew about Arkansas. My brother graduated from Marion High, Arkansas in Little Rock. So he knew about Arkansas, but I didn't, just the name.
Yeah, so then so tell me about your train trip. Tell me a little bit about what conditions were like on the train that took you to Arkansas.
Pardon?
What were the conditions like on that train that took you to Arkansas?
Oh, on the train to Arkansas, of course the Army had to have the good trains, and we were given the discarded trains, the rickety ones. And so every time the Army train, we were put on the sidetrack, then we had to pull the shades down and sit in the dark until the Army train went by. And then our meals were served on the train. But one day we didn't have any meals, and we wondered why. And the cooks said that we didn't tip them, so they weren't going to serve us. So we all had to dig in our purse with our meager funds and take a collection, and we gave it to them, and then they went, and we were given our meals. I'll never forget that.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
It's disgraceful.
Yeah, and they were being paid by the government to cook and serve us, but because we did not tip them, they went on a strike on the train, and we were left helpless.
Had you brought food from home?
No, we didn't have much food on the train. I mean, because we didn't. I had a few things for the baby, but that was all, not for ourselves.
You told me that the roof, that there was leaks.
Yes, on the train it leaked and dripped, rather, I should say, so we had to hold up something, a towel or something over our heads to keep ourselves from getting wet.
Did you sleep sitting up?
Sitting up? No, I had the baby, so we were given one of those, what do you call, a sleeping compartment. So and we stayed there all the time on the compartment, but the others all had to sit up.
It's inhumane. And here you have two brothers in the Army. At this point, are you angry?
I was angry at that. My two brothers were in the Army. They were in uniform, and they were in the station in the area around Arkansas, I think. I can't remember the name, but yeah, Shelby, Camp Shelby, I know. But we were helpless. I wasn't going to have anger in my heart all the time because I didn't want my children to grow up and see me that way. So I made the best of it.
What's the Japanese expression? Shigatanai?
Shigatanai, yes. Japanese always say shigatanai, make the best of whatever we have, and that's what I tried to do. And so we had a pretty happy life. I used to sing to the children and take them for walks, and we were fed in pretty good. The bottles were delivered at, because we had no refrigerator. The bottles were put on the side. There's a little container at the door, and they were all delivered at a certain time. And then later, the snack. The babies were given snacks with the milk, and we had snacks for them.
Is this on the train or is this back in Arkansas?
Back on the train and in Arkansas too.
Now tell me, before we get to Arkansas, what were your first impressions when you got off the train?
Well, I was bewildered. I didn't know where we were going, or what the situation was going to be. But I knew it was going to be set up like the camp in Fresno. And so my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, had gone to Arkansas ahead of us to prepare the papers and everything. So she met us at the train stop, and it was my daughter's 3rd birthday. So she said, "I can't give you any present, but I know she had a lollipop." And she was so happy to get the lollipop. So that made the day for me.
Boy, it must have been kind of a empty place there. I mean, just sort of, was it hot when you arrived?
We arrived, yes, it was hot, but not as hot as Fresno, because we were in Fresno for 3 months. And so by that time, it was cool. It was when we arrived in Arkansas, it was September the 3rd, because it was my daughter's birthday.
Now, most people in Arkansas had never seen a Japanese American before.
Yes.
And tell me how they responded to you.
Well, when we went into our assigned barracks, first thing I noticed, the rods in the closet were set so low that if I hung my blouse, it was touching the floor. And then I had to go to the laundry room to wash my children's clothes, and the tubs were so low that I had to get on my knees to use the washboard to wash. And since my husband was assigned to the carpentry shop, he and his crew had to go around raising the rods in the closet and raising the stand for the tub, so we could at least stand and do our clothes using the washboard. Of course, there was no washing machine, so we had to scrub the old-fashioned way. But since I was brought up in the farm and during Depression, I knew how to use it, but there were some people who didn't know what they were for.
Now, why do you suppose everything was so low?
Everything was put so low because people in Arkansas thought we were midgets. And I just can't get over the fact that they were so ignorant in this United States that they would think that we were midgets with buck teeth.
No, why do you think they thought that?
Because I think that they thought we were so because they weren't educated. They didn't read or anything because, we were born here. Our parents came from Japan, but they weren't midgets. But I don't know why they thought we were midgets.
Really? Midgets? Not just short, but midgets?
Yeah, they thought we were midgets, and everything was so low, and they thought we were ignorant, and they were amazed. I could hear them say, "Why, these people can talk English, they can type, they know how to read and write." And so it was shocking to me to think that people at that time would think that, that we were so ignorant, like if we were in the back country or something.
So they didn't know you were American citizens,
No, they didn't know we were citizens. But the thing is, I still to this day can't understand why in Arkansas, where we were in Jerome and Roar, they thought that we were so ignorant that we didn't know how to read or write. And here, a lot of the evacuees, the girls and ladies, were school teachers from the Los Angeles area or secretaries, and even I graduated high school. My husband went to college, and we knew. But over there, I guess it was not that way.
Because I think that they thought you were Japanese.
Yeah, I think maybe because we were Japanese. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think they thought you were from Japan.
Yeah, maybe they did.
Can you say that in a sentence, that maybe they just thought we were from
Yeah,
Japan?
well, I think maybe they thought we were from Japan and didn't know how, weren't educated here. Even our parents came from Japan, but they knew, they didn't speak very good English or read and write, but they knew things a lot better than that.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, what else did you think? You thought that they had. How else? What other misconceptions do you think they had about you?
Pardon?
What other misconceptions do you think they had about you besides the fact that they thought you were short, they thought you were uneducated? What else did they think?
I think people in Arkansas thought we were their enemies of the United States. Although my two brothers were in the United States Army at the time, they still thought that we would sabotage. And so they had fence and towers around the camp. And even if the little children went close to them, they would point the rifles or guns at them.
Did that ever happen to your children?
No, I didn't let them out of my sight, so it never happened to my children. But, of course, my children were too young to be wandering around camp by themselves. But the older ones, the children would play and get too near to the towers, and they would be pointed, the guns would be pointed at them. And I think that was horrible.
It was horrible. Did you notice any difference between the Japanese Americans in camp and the local Arkansans in terms of educational levels?
I think the education in California are much higher, and many of us, I didn't go to college, but we were given, they had gone to college, and our friends had gone to college, but even in California, they couldn't get jobs because they were Japanese, and they had to take lower paying jobs. But in Arkansas, I think the school system over there wasn't very well. We're very good. And so that's why they thought we were uneducated people.
What did you think of them?
I didn't think too much of them. I just felt sorry for them, that that they didn't have, the school hadn't taught them or educated them that the United States of America is an integrated country with mixed people from different countries.
I know people in southern Arkansas told me they'd never even been to Little Rock.
Yeah.
You can imagine how foreign California sounded.
We should change that.
Okay.